For maps to be ready for use as materials, tiling is only one part of the equation. We now need to clean them up and make them look as pristine as possible. That means getting rid of small imperfections, removing folds, and performing other basic operations. One of the most important tools in our toolbox for this type of work is the gradient removal tool. Let's bring it up. As the name implies, it removes gradients, and it's best for getting rid of wrinkles, folds, and general unevenness. Even though it can be applied to all maps, you won't always have to do that, and in some cases, you will have to use different gradient removal settings for different maps. Usually, the normal map is the one best for removing these folds and wrinkles. Here, the normal map looks really good. There aren't any big issues, but there is a slight unevenness. That's normal. A piece of fabric won't be perfectly smooth. There will be some slight imperfections here and there. We can get rid of these very easily, but we need to do that carefully so no other details are lost. Once we enable the layer, you will notice that the unevenness is now gone. We define how strong the effect will be with the smoothing radius. Even though the result looks good, we still need to make sure that we didn't erase any of the important details. To help us with that, we'll use this option here, Show Gradients. With it, we can visualize the bits of information that will be removed. If we start reducing the smoothing radius, notice that more and more details are lost. And at some point, we'll start erasing all these small threads. Now, if I disable the Show Gradients option, you'll see that we completely ruined the normal map. There's no rich information there anymore. This is how it looked before, and this is how it looks now. So, in this case, we need to go somewhere here. We could probably go a little bit lower. Yeah, that looks good. And now we have all the details, but without the unevenness. This is the before, and this is the after. It's a pretty subtle change, but it will make a difference in the final product. We can apply this change to all other maps, but as I mentioned earlier, it's not always needed. As we've seen already, the diffuse map is fine without it. Depending on the surface, some maps will need it more than others, so the best practice is to go through all of them and evaluate whether anything more needs to be done. For example, let's check the metalness map. It doesn't really need any adjustments. There's nothing bad that stands out, and if we enable gradient removal, we're actually destroying the map rather than improving it. Let me show you now a slightly more complex example. Here we have two different things going on. We have the general unevenness, and we have this annoying wrinkle here. We'll approach this in two steps. We'll first get rid of the bigger uneven areas, and then we'll remove the wrinkle. Let's first disable all other channels. And with the Show Gradients option on, let's see how far we can go. Let's increase it to 1. Okay. Let's now do 0.5. We shouldn't go overboard, so let's do 0.6. Yeah, that looks good to me. So this is what will be removed. This is the before, and this is the after. That looks wonderful. Now, to get rid of the wrinkle, we'll add another gradient removal layer and target this area specifically. To achieve that, we'll use a mask. So now, instead of affecting everything, we will only affect this small area. Let's increase the size a little bit, and let's also reduce the hardness. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, that's too much. And now let's start painting over the area here, and here, and here. Since it's difficult to evaluate what area we'll be affecting, we have this Show Mask option. So if we enable it and disable it, we can clearly see what we're affecting. The next feature to help with the task is enabling the directional option. We now can use different values for width and height. In this case, we will reduce the height. As I'm reducing it, notice that the fold starts to disappear. This was the before, and this is the after. If we increase the height, we're getting the wrinkle back, and as we reduce the height, we also reduce the wrinkle. Let's go somewhere here. So this is how the entire normal map looks before and after. What we started with, and how we ended up. All these small adjustments make a big difference, and in the end, we will see this level of attention pay off in the final material. Now let's check some of the other maps. We'll use another gradient removal layer. I usually just disable everything and enable only the one I want to work with. We need to go through each map and evaluate if gradient removal is needed. If a map doesn't show any signs of unevenness or any other weird artifacts, we don't need to apply it. And when we do apply it, we need to be conservative so we don't lose any important details. On the diffuse map, we need to be extra careful. Higher values are usually the better way to go. In this case, because we have shades of the same color, the result is not going to be bad. But with other maps, the effect can be quite intense. After a while, you'll instinctively know what values will work best, but the Show Gradients option removes a lot of the guesswork. Now that the maps are free of any folds, wrinkles, and general unevenness, it's time to focus on the small things, cleaning up specks of dust or other debris stuck on the surface. The best tool for that is the Stamp tool. Let's create a stamp layer, and even from this zoom level, I can immediately see this white spot here. So let's clean that up. If you've used Photoshop, the principle is exactly the same. We copy from one good area of the image to cover the problematic area. The size of our brush is a little bit too big, so let's reduce it. And let's also reduce the hardness a little bit too. And now we just sample from a suitable area, something that fits the spot we want to cover. Let's go somewhere here. To define the source, we use the Command key on the Mac or the Alt key on Windows. The crosshair is a nice visual guide of the sampling area we're currently using. And now let's go back to the area we want to cover and start painting. And just like that, the white spot is gone. We repeat this process for all the other small areas on the image. Here's another one that needs fixing. The process is exactly the same. We sample an area and then we use it to paint over a problematic area. For the cases like this one where it's difficult to see which areas were modified, we have the Show Mask option. When we enable it, it's very easy to see all the affected areas. The Stamp tool is great for these small corrections. For bigger ones, we have another tool, the Layer and Mask operator. Think of it as a more flexible stamp tool, but instead of using it to take out specks of dust, it's best for bigger operations. For example, blending the edges of our tile. Let's say that our tiling is finished and we did the best job we could do, but we can still see the repeating pattern. Layer Mask is a great way to introduce the randomness needed. The operator is split into two tabs, and you can use them in different order. We can either draw the mask first and then move the area used for sampling, or we can first move the sampled area and then start drawing the mask. It's up to you. Let's move the image first and then start drawing. Here, it doesn't matter which option we pick because we don't have any masks drawn. If we had one, we would have to pick the image only option. This is what makes this operator flexible. We can move the sampled area, we can move the mask, we can move both. Basically, we can choose what fits our needs best. And now we can start drawing. Let's pick a smaller brush, something like this. And all we need to do now is start introducing some randomness. Let's say that I like most of the work done here, but I don't like this area that much. We can easily get rid of it without impacting the rest of the work. Let's first enable the Show Mask option so it's easier to see the problematic area. Then we use Subtract and start erasing things. The other great thing with Layer Mask is that we have the ability to feather our brush strokes after the fact, just by increasing the feather slider. As you can see, Layer and Mask is a more flexible tool compared to Stamp, but both have their use cases. The last two operators, Rotate and Shift, are much simpler in their functionality, but they're still extremely helpful. Rotate is perfect when we have materials with stripes or wood grain, and they need to be applied a certain way on an object. Let's take this texture as an example. The stripes go horizontally, but let's say that on our blanket we want to have them run vertically. All we need to do is add the rotate operator and pick 90 degrees. I've already done this on this tab here, so I'll discard the changes, and now we have these two tabs, one with the stripes going horizontally and the other one with the stripes going vertically. Now let's create a new material and see these two tabs in action. We'll cover material creation in more detail in a separate video, but let's quickly preview how the stripes will look on an object. Let's make the preview bigger, and let's go for this object. On this node, we can see that the vertical revision is already applied, but we can also switch to the other version. So now the stripes run horizontally. As you can see, the rotate operator is really simple, but is very handy in situations like these. What's worth mentioning here is that behind the scenes, things are more complex. It's not just a simple rotation. The normal map has to be reprocessed so that its directionality is still correct. So that's the rotate operator. The last one in our collection is the shift operator. It has a simple but helpful function. It allows us to move the pattern around. Where would that be useful? If we want to display the pattern a specific way. Notice how the tile looks different if we shift the map around. The final result will be exactly the same, but the pattern looks better this way than this way. So when we render out the final deliverables, the output we get out of them will be different. It's not a function you will use all the time, but when you have to, it will be indispensable. And now, with our maps tiled and cleaned up, we're ready to move on to the next step of the process, creating the material for a 3D object.